let's take a look at how to add some custom monitors for you to track. All right, so I have just an empty scene here, and it just has a script on it. Now this can be an auto load or singleton or global, whatever you want to call it. If you wanted, and it might be better that way. That way you can specifically keep a monitoring script of where you set all of this up. But I'm just going to put it here because it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, it's just up to personal preference. Now I have three variables here. I'm going to track the health, and I'm going to track a Boolean, and then I just have a random number generator in order to use here. Now, normally when people end up tracking things, from everything that I've seen, we put our information here, we do our changes. Now I'm just randomizing my RNG, of course, and then just setting the health based on some of these random numbers, right? Of course, we're not changing health completely all the time, because as you can see in there, we do have some flat lines, so we're not changing it every frame. We're changing it based on the number that we get when it comes to random. And then my Boolean, I'm just setting it to n because our range is going to give us either 0 or 1, and a Boolean is either 0 or 1, right? True or false, or I should say false or true, because false is 0, true is 1. So since I don't have an actual game where I'm setting these, I'm just setting these via randomization, right? This way we can have some switch up over time. Now, how do we actually add these into our monitor down here? Well, what you do is you actually go into, we're going to do this in the ready function. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the performance class dot add custom monitor, and we need an ID. So this way you come in and you would say something like health, right? Because that's what you want to display as the ID down here. In this case, I have player health, so let me just go ahead and change that. Player health. Right, and then next we need a second argument, which is going to be a callable. So we have a callable, and of course it's going to be on self. We're going to call the get function, so get as a string, and the third argument, which is optional, is arguments in the form of an array. So comma outside of my callable, square brackets for an array, and the argument I'm going to pass in is health. All right, the same name as my variable. So I'm going to call get, pass in my variable name, and we're going to get that info. We're going to get whatever that value is, and it's going to be displayed under the monitor called player health. All right, that seems good. Let's go ahead and we run that. Go down to debugger, monitors tab, scroll down, and you can see under the custom section we have player health, and if we enable that, we can see the numbers as it's changing here. All right, so if you wanted to track things like this is how you would do it. Normally, when people are doing things like this, you'll see people come in and they'll print out their health, they'll make sure that everything's working and their testings. But instead of printing constantly for something like this, you can just output it to your monitor and you can see it. Now, because we're getting this in, or we're setting this info, we're getting it into our display here. We could also use a function in the performance class, such as performance.get custom monitor, like so, right? And then we could just pass in this ID that we gave it, like that. And now we can get that data back, and we could use that to build on-screen overlays. If you've used MSI Afterburner and Riva Tuner, you'll know that you'll see like the frame time displayed up there, and you could get that. You could get that data, and you could draw a graph with it. But that's not what we're doing. What we're doing is this. Now, the downside to this, I guess, if you want to put one, is, you know what? Before we get there, let's talk about these categories, because this is under custom. But if we wanted to keep things organized, we wanted to say our player health under player, we can just put the path, right? So player/player health, and just putting that one change inside of our ID is going to put that player health into a player section, so it no longer says custom. Now, what is that negative I was going to tell you about? Well, the negative is that we can only do numbers. So if I come in here and I add a custom monitor, I'll call this, I'll say my Boolean, right? We'll create the callable for self. We'll call it the method. We're going to get. We'll pass in the second set of parameters, which is my bool. We run it, and we're going to get all these errors popping up, right? Every time we're checking for data. Now it shows up here, but it's all just going to be 0. This is never going to change, unlike our player health. Now, why is this? Well, like I said, this is the con. This always comes back as an integer. That's what we need. But our Boolean clearly is a Boolean. It's not an integer. And I'm just going to go ahead and add a section in here. Call it Booleans. But you'll see that these issues, that it's never going to change, right? It's going to remain a 0. So what do we do for that? Well, we need to convert our Boolean into an integer. Now, like I stated at the beginning, luckily enough for us, a Boolean works as an integer when I was setting these, right? It's either 0 or 1, or either false or true. And we can actually do this. If you have a situation like this, you could run functions for things like this, right? So say func bool, we'll say bool to int. And all we're going to do is just return our Boolean, in this case my bool. Can we do a toInt here? We can just wrap it as well, like that. And then all we have to do is delete our argument because we don't need it anymore. And we can just call the function a bool to int. Now in this case, with a name like that, you probably do want to put an argument in there, so you can just pass in a Boolean. But in this case, I only have the one. And just by making that one change, we can go ahead and run this. And if we take a look, we can say now my Boolean has numbers, right? It's working 0 and 1 for false and true. All right, so we can see that completely changing now. So that would be the downside, is you have to convert it to an integer. But you can see how this could be useful if you're adding your own custom monitors in here, instead of constantly printing out every single frame a piece of stats, right? Maybe you want to keep track of how many enemies are currently in your scene or in your level. You could put that number in here, right? You could add them to a group, and you can get the size of that group. If you're working with it within a tree, and you have maybe a node specifically that all your enemies become a child of, you could get that node and get its child count. And of course, this doesn't have to be enemies. This could extend to a wide variety of things. Anything that you can get or convert to a number, and it doesn't have to be an integer. Of course, it could be a float. You can go ahead and monitor them here. And of course, if you can monitor them here, then you could also get that custom monitor. And with that data, you could draw on any kind of performance that you want to put in there. Now, I do want to note that these colors are similar, but they're not exact. And you'll see here, just in this example, if I go ahead and just copy all of these, we just do a couple of these, for example, and it's going to yell at me because they're all the same. So we'll add some numbers in there, 2 and 3. And if I run this, you can see as you're adding these in, they do all get their own colors. So it's just coincidence that some of them are the same color, I suppose, or similar color. When you get full sections like this, you can see it's almost like each section gets their own gradient, I guess you can say. I'm not sure what determines these colors, but we cannot set these colors individually. So the colors just are what they are. But if you didn't know about the monitors, hopefully you know now. And if you didn't know that you could add your own custom ones in there, now you do. All right, take care. Have yourselves a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next one.